The recent dynamic state of the replacement property marketplace has created a very interesting phenomenon. Namely, there just aren't enough good properties in the current inventory available to the average 1031 exchanger. Or maybe another way to describe the situation is to say it like this. We have too many investors in the midst of a 1031 exchange chasing the same replacement property. This makes getting an offer accepted much tougher and puts a lot more investors at risk of not being able to identify within their standard 45-day ID window. And we all know what that means, paying those capital gain taxes when you really didn't want to. Well, this has actually happened with 1031 exchangers before. In fact, this type of environment was what created a whole new class of investment product back when the TIC, or tenant in common investment, was developed. A TIC was basically a property whose ownership was distributed and syndicated amongst many different exchangers. But because the exchangers actually owned an undivided interest in the property, even if they only owned a small percentage of, we'll say, a large triple net investment shopping center, their purchase of that interest still qualified for deferred gain treatment under Section 1031. Now, while some TICs still exist, the new reality for many exchangers is that because there were so many abuses of the exchangers in these TIC investments, that the word on the street now is just to avoid them if you're a 1031 exchanger. Obviously, the reason why the TICs were so popular was because of the difficult market, and because if your 45-day window was closing, you could just exchange into a TIC and still be okay exchange-wise because you owned a piece of that underlying asset. Well, let's fast forward to today. Once again, we have a tough replacement property marketplace, but according to Stephen R. Meyer, an attorney in Chicago, the place to exchange is not into a TIC, but it's much more sophisticated and compliant Big Brother, namely a DST. DST actually stands for Delaware Statutory Trust, which is simply a mechanism created in Delaware so legitimate 1031 exchangers can all exchange together, or crowdfund if you will, into a truly investment-grade property, which is both professionally managed for cash flow, but also compliant and compatible with deferred gain treatment under Section 1031. And if you're a qualified investor, you can exchange into a DST with as little as $25,000 or as much as you want. Now, the purpose of the DST reference here is educational only. We've been asked a lot lately about DSTs, so we thought we'd just explain a little bit about them. But remember, we're not suggesting you don't buy the exact replacement property you want. Rather, what we're attempting to do is give you as an exchanger an option if you can't find the right one, or if your 45-day window is closing quickly and you just can't get anything else lined up. Or then again, if you have 1031 exchange funds left over after an acquisition, maybe you can buy a piece of a triple net investment that provides for some cash flow as opposed to paying that capital gain tax because your time ran out. But a DST works for that. Anyway, that's a little bit about DSTs. We'll link to the DST article by Stephen Meyer, as well as provide a link to 1031 Crowdfunding. They're the largest crowdfunding clearinghouse in the space, and you can go to them for additional information.